Okay, I want to thank everybody for joining us. We're here today to talk about partnering to detect and respond to cyber attacks. This webinar is really focused on the launch that we have the CanSSOC Threat Feed last Monday, May the 10th. So on the call with me today, we have myself, Kevin Parent. I'm the program manager for the cybersecurity program. We have Jill Kowalczyk, the executive director from CanSSOC, and we have Martin Vezina, who's the security solution architect product lead for the threat feed from CanSSOC as well. Just some housekeeping before we get started. The webinar will be recorded and archived, including all of the audio. The video will be archived on our YouTube channel, or maybe promoted through other vehicles we have, other channels we have. Any text or comments, if responded to, will remain completely anonymous and not be part of the recording. The recorded video will include your voice if the audio participation is enabled. I'd also like to draw your attention to the fact that we have simultaneous interpretation that is completely available here. So in the bottom right-hand side, you should be able to choose a language of your choice. The webinar will be presented in English, but will be translated to French in real time. So why are we here? Our shared reality. We are all completely connected. Every device, every organization is really susceptible to cyber threats. Given how connected we are, we're only as strong as the weakest link in our chain. One point that I really like to stress is this one up next, which is that cybersecurity is not just an IT problem, it's an organizational priority. And a national approach to cybersecurity is only possible when the whole sector is aligned and coordinates their efforts. When it comes to securing the whole sector, sorry, give me one second. Yeah, it looks like I'm having some problems with my audio. So my apologies. Let me know if it gets any better. When it comes to securing the whole sector, we are stronger than the sum of our parts. So the greater vision is a much more secure nation from coast to coast, and to be able to secure the whole R&E sector that we have in Canada. So Canary launched the CIP, the Cybersecurity Initiatives Program, in November of 2020. It is a national program designed to serve the R&E sector, higher ed, and it is built by the community for the community. National coordination for local impact. We leverage the natural collaborative nature of the sector. We look to really mitigate the risks at each layer, and we build on existing initiatives, and we engage the entire community to try to really evolve this process and to try to better secure all of higher ed in Canada. Give me one second. So the CIP program was built and really established through work with our partners. They include all of the partners basically that we have in all of the provinces and all the territories, so the NREN partners. They also include groups like CIRA, CanSSOC, Cuccio, etc. So it is really a group effort, and it is really a fully collaborative effort. So what are the benefits to institutions who want to sign up? You can really augment your infrastructure that you have. This is important that we say that you can augment. We are not looking to take over what you're doing. We're not looking to replace what you currently do. We're looking to simply to augment and to supplement what you already have in place. You can measure the impact of cybersecurity initiatives at your organization. You can work with the national team and real community of experts in the R&E type field. You can increase your team's security capacity and expertise. Training and support is integrated into the program. So each thing that we launch, we offer you some support and training for, and strengthen the overall security posture of your organization. The great piece for you as an institution is this is at zero cost to you. So all of what we do, we completely fund through March 31st, 2024. So zero cost to you at the institution. The first three funded initiatives, the CIRA DNS D-Zone. This launched last November and has been really successful. The adoption rate of this is up around 80 to 85%. The CanSSOC Threat Feed, which we just launched last Monday, so May the 10th. So far so good, it looks really good, and that's what we're basically going to focus on today. And the IDS, which is the replacement for the JSP, which was the Joint Security Project, looking to launch sometime late June, start of July. At the moment, we have 210 different institutions that are basically able to use these at no cost to them. We've really tried to introduce different types of services that work with each other, but really complement each other as well. So this graph basically gives you an idea of what each does and what level they work at. So for example, CIRA DNS is really meant to block your users from going places that they shouldn't be. The threat feed is meant to block traffic from the outside in. So you can choose which ones you want to use, but they all are really designed with a different use in mind. So we would, of course, highly recommend that if you're up for it, that you should really take advantage of all of them. I'm going to turn it over to Jill now to talk about the CanSSOC.
Thanks, Kevin. Next slide. So I'll only talk for a couple minutes and just give a really high-level introduction on sort of what CanSSOC is and what we're looking to do. And then I'll pass it over to my colleague, Makan Vesna, who will dive a little bit into a little bit more detail related to Threat Feed, how it works, some of the benefits, and what the impact might be from your institution. We also have on the call Axel Schultz, a security analyst with CanSSOC, who's here to answer questions. He'll turn his video on at the end to help us out with some of that. Axel is one of the individuals that supports onboarding and working with the institution, so you'll get to know him potentially as you move forward and leverage the threat feed. And Makan is our sort of subject matter expert on it, who has supported the deployment and development of threat feed. So before I pass it over to my colleagues, I'll just start really quickly with what is CanSSOC. So a lot of the messages you're going to hear in the three quick slides I'll go through are almost the same as the messages that Kevin provided when he talked a lot about Canary and Canary's mandate and vision. And really, CanSSOC sees ourselves as part of that shared fabric for which Canary is a critical part. As you can also see on this slide are many others like CIRA, the Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity, we work quite closely with them. We actually ingest their threat feed and provide it out as well. Cuccio is critical, and the NREN partners, which you'll hear lots and lots about. For those of you who aren't familiar, the NREN partner would be that provincial or territorial organization that exists depending on where you are. So Orion, Cybera, BCNet are some of the names of those NREN partners. And really, from a CanSSOC perspective, our mandate and vision is better than we can do on our own, always in partnership. So it started as collaboration with a few institutions just to see how we might be able to tackle this cybersecurity challenge together. We always intended from the beginning that it would never just be a small number of institutions. The goal was always to work with and support a large number of institutions. And we never expected to do this on our own. There's a lot of existing organizations and resources and people out there. And as we all know, if you're in the information security space, there just isn't enough of us out there in this space that have that expertise. And so we really need to pool our resources to tackle this challenge most effectively. Furthermore, we like to think of sort of the cybersecurity challenge. If you go to many of these conferences, it's the next warfare, if you will. And so it makes a lot of sense as a country to work together to defend against these new and emerging threats. Next slide. So we get a lot of sort of what is CanSSOC or even what isn't CanSSOC. So on this slide, you'll see sort of 5 areas. These areas align with the NIST framework. This is a framework that is sort of emerging as something that many institutions, Canary and others are working towards around in the cybersecurity space to support that common language. The great thing about the NIST framework is that it breaks things down into 5 high-level areas that really support having a conversation. So identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. CanSSOC's focus is very much on detection and response. And we focus here not because we think the other areas aren't important. In fact, quite the opposite. All of the areas are important. But these are the 2 which are a huge challenge. It's costly to detect and respond to events. It's often challenging to find, detect these events on your own. So this is really where our focus is. Now, if you're in the information security space and you saw Kevin's slides and you hear more about Threat Feed, we're very much talking about integrating that into your firewall, which definitely would fit more into the identify and protect categories. But that is really the foundation that allows us to detect and respond. And we'll talk a little bit about how we're working with institutions already where they have actually detected incidents and events. We integrate that into Threat Feed, and then we share that information out with the broader community to really help develop the detection and response phase. Beyond Threat Feed, CanSSOC is looking at a number of different sort of opportunities and initiatives where we can collaborate with Canary, NREN partners, the Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity, and other institutions to better support and develop the information security programs for all institutions across Canada. However, we are going to focus today on just that Threat Feed. If you're interested in learning about any of the other sort of ideas or initiatives, please reach out and we'd be happy to have that conversation. Next slide. So before I pass it over to Makan, I'll just finish talking about sort of the personnel and the people side of things. So one of the things we get quite a bit is on both ends of the spectrum of institutions is this comment of how will this help me, or well, how does this fit with what I currently have? So you see here this idea that on one end of the spectrum, we have a number of institutions in Canada that have limited cybersecurity resources. Oftentimes, these institutions are characterized by having no dedicated information security people, or maybe it sits off of the side of someone's desk. Maybe they have one person, but they're new in this space. And then the right-hand side of the spectrum, you have institutions that have larger information security teams. So 5, 10, 15, 20, I don't think I've seen more than 30 teams of people that are dedicated to information security. The Threat Feed service, as well as all of the components that we're looking at on the CanSSOC side, are developed in a way where they support all of the institutions in the spectrum. They might get leveraged, or the benefits to those institutions might be slightly different, but we work to develop them so that they provide advantages for everyone. So if you're an institution that really has limited cybersecurity resources, the great thing about Threat Feed that my pen will go into is you really only need 1, maximum 3 hours from a firewall administrator to look at what the threat feed is and then integrate it into your next-gen firewall on campus. You can also integrate it into other systems and solutions, but that might take a little bit more time and energy depending upon what you have. And once you've done that integration and you have set it in there and you've put it in blocking, it really is a set it and forget it. So we have almost more than 30 institutions across Canada that have already done this, ranging from small to medium institutions all the way up to large institutions that are blocking traffic based on Threat Feed, and have seen quite a few successes on that. On the other end of the spectrum, if you're an institution that maybe already has a robust threat intelligence function inside your institution, you might say, well, I'm already doing this. Why would I want to sign up to CanSSOC? So the advantages that CanSSOC can give you if you do have this robust program, you likely have people who are watching Twitter, seeing what's out there in the open source world. You may be subscribed to 2 or 3 different feeds, Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity, maybe a commercial feed and others. And you have someone that is integrating all of that threat intelligence internally and then leveraging it in your devices. And the advantage of CanSSOC is that analyst time you have that you're spending doing that, CanSSOC can do some of that for you. So the analyst time you spend there, you can either also do it and share that information back with CanSSOC to share it out with all the institutions in Canada, or take that time and spend more time threat hunting or taking the indicators that are already in Threat Feed and looking internally to see if they've already impacted or gotten into your network and are causing challenges. So that's really where the benefits are on either side. With that, I'm going to pass it over to my pen, who will spend a little bit more time talking about Threat Feed in a bit more detail. Okay.
Thank you, Jill. So what is Threat Feed? So in a nutshell, essentially what we do with Threat Feed is we take threat intelligence coming from multiple sources and we make it into actionable threat intelligence indicator feeds. So if we look at our threat intelligence sources, what we do is we source high quality threat intelligence and and if needed, so we establish agreements on behalf of all of our participants. So if we take it from the top on the left of this slide here, so first one, so this is the source of threat intelligence coming from government, so CCCS, so Canadian Cybersecurity, Canadian Cyber Center for Security. So we have obtained access to their Avantel feed. The Avantel feed is not a public threat intelligence feed, so this is a feed that's limited to organizations that fit within the critical sector of the Canadian economy and who have signed an specific agreement with CCCS. So CanSSOC has done that on behalf of all of the Threat Feed participants. Also, we source threat intelligence from a commercial threat intelligence provider. So we establish a relationship with one of the top threat intelligence provider in the world, and they are providing us their high quality threat intelligence. So we take that, we bring that into Threat Feed. One of the other sources, so again, and this is one of the keys behind CanSSOC, we want to promote the sharing of threat intelligence amongst the partner institutions, so among educational and research institutions. So one of the threat intelligence sources that we integrate is intelligence that's coming in from Threat Feed participants. So we want to make it easy for Threat Feed participants to take the threat intelligence based on what they're seeing within their own organization and bring it to Threat Feed so that we can share it.
Martin, I think it's not our day. Kevin, can you hear Martin, or is it just me? Okay.
No, I think he's lost it.
All right. So Axel, do you want to take over or would you like me to? We have backup.
Either is fine.
You go.
So threat intelligence, Martin was talking about how part of what we want to do with the threat intelligence from various institutions is being able to leverage that additional information and bring it into our threat feed service. And so with our threat feed service, we're gathering all this various threat intelligence, applying curation to it, and then essentially creating feeds that can be consumed by various security appliances. So that can be the easiest solution, kind of straight into your firewall. More complicated use case would be using it in your SIEMs or other threat appliances. Probably next slide. So why CanSSOC and the threat feed? Well, we want to reduce time spent on analysts for curating threat intelligence. So that means making it easier for institutions to focus on investigations on their side and not trying to re-identify what information is malicious or not malicious. So reducing some of that overhead. We're also, one of the things we're doing is consolidating multiple sources of threat intelligence into one consistent curated feed. So again, instead of trying to go out there as your own institution and getting threat intelligence from various different sources, we've already created these agreements and we're ingesting that information all in one simple source for you to access. And then we also have analysts like myself that are constantly researching open source threat intelligence that's happening, whether it's on Twitter or various other sources on the internet, and adding that to the feed as we go, as you know, threats and events are happening in the landscape are emerging. And then the final reason why CanSSOC Threat Feed is you're getting institutional specific threat intelligence, right? So this is information that's coming from institutions, whether it's McGill or University of Toronto or somewhere else. If they're seeing threat intelligence or attacks that are happening on premise and they're adding this back into the CanSSOC Threat Feed, it's something that every institution can then benefit from. Next slide. So the threat intelligence platform versus the feeds. So basically there are two pieces of technology here that we're leveraging. MISP being the main one. It's the repository of all our indicators and attributes. You'll get all kinds of information in there. In addition to attributes, you have links and contextual information for indicators. It's our centralized location for investigations related to those indicators. So if we're putting in information, oh, I see Martin back. Yes. Martin, do you want to take back over here?
I can take it over. I'm sorry about that. I have no idea what happened. It never happened to me. My whole Wi-Fi crapped out, even the McGill Wi-Fi. Now I plugged in my iPhone, my computer, and I plugged in the wired connection to internet. So I'm not sure which one's working, but it seems to be working now. Very sorry about that. It was entirely not planned. It never happens unless there's an important presentation. So
I just started on the slide, so I'll let you take over from there.
So did you come on? So you went to the 3 other slides?
Yeah, I might have done it a little quick.
We're all good.
Yeah, we're all good.
Yeah.
And this one you had just started on it?
Yep.
Okay, sorry. Okay, yeah. So what is our platform for threat intelligence? So platform for threat intelligence, so essentially our core is the MISP. So MISP is where we gather all of the threat intelligence. MISP is where we do all of our vetting. MISP is how we're allowed then to redistribute that threat intelligence, okay? So Essentially, MISP, it's an open source platform, okay, that has a growing community, so it's definitely not dead. So since we've decided
just one of those days. Okay, Axel, you keep going, and I'm going to tell Martin that you will just finish us off today.
Yeah, no problem. We were discussing MISP here. Like Martin was saying, it's an open source solution. There's a growing community behind it. It's a very extensible platform. There's a lot of different things you can do with it as a result, and there's no vendor tie-in either. So if there's something that we identify down the road that we want to do, MISP is a good solution because of that. The other piece of technology that we're using is MindMeld. It's used to generate the feeds themselves. So MindMeld basically pulls from the MISP database and looks for specific tags, as well as a few other things, and based on that information generates various feeds. So we currently produce a couple of different feeds that can be ingested and used in different ways. And MindMeld is an open source solution, but it's not as active of a project. So we're currently in the process of replacing it with our own custom solution.
Yeah, and sorry, I'm back. So they must be doing some work in the area on the internet. So now I'm on specifically on my phone on the telephone.
Okay, we'll just have Axel finish this one today,
yeah,
and you can do the next webinar. Thanks.
Sorry.
No worries. Go ahead, Axel.
So next slide. So the threat intelligence pipeline. So a bit of a breakdown here. I was talking about how Martin and I were both talking about how information is ingested. And then there's a little bit of the magic that happens behind the curtains. And that's the negative curation, the positive curation, and the manual curation that we do that allows us to create context-specific threat feeds that are curated and not just regular information. And so the reason you want to do this is threat intelligence comes in all kinds of different qualities. So sometimes people will see something happening in their network and they'll identify malicious IPs, but also maybe IPs that aren't malicious that were just used as part of the infrastructure in the attack itself. So this could be something like a server that's hosted on the Google Cloud platform or something like that. And so you don't necessarily want to block Google or Microsoft or something else that's being used and you're just seeing in your investigation. And so we do this curation process. And so that first step of the negative curation is really just looking at anything that's being ingested into the threat feed service and comparing it to various warning lists like the Majestic Million, as well as various custom lists related to the higher education sector. And so if you're adding in an indicator by accident, like Microsoft.com or something like that, they get parsed and disabled from that process so that we're not creating a denial of service on something like Microsoft. And then the second part of the process in curation is we want to be able to leverage threat intelligence that comes from trusted vetted sources. And so this is the automatic positive curation. So if we know we've established certain internal processes at various institutions that are currently, watching the perimeter of their network, seeing scanning activity or phishing activity, and adding that into a specific internal process, and we want to block on that. And we know that this information is trusted, has already been vetted at one level. We can ingest that information and leverage it right away. So this is also done with our the various sources of threat intelligence that we have coming in from our commercial partner, as well as things like CCCS Aventail. Now, that said, anything that's coming in that's trusted and vetted, that can be leveraged right away, is still subject to that negative curation process. So if there's threat intelligence upstream somewhere that gets added that shouldn't have been added, it's still going through that process of ensuring we're not going to block something from a major site that's being used. And then the last step in the creation or curation process is manual positive curation. And so this is kind of like where we might identify something on the through OSINT sources that needs to be added into the threat feed. So this could be something that was reported or just through research. And once you've grabbed all this, basically this is all pulled into MISP, and MindMeld pulls that information and we create various feeds out of it. And so those feeds are generated based on some of the contextual basis and can then be ingested into various security appliances. So next slide. And so integration, most next-gen firewalls can consume threat intelligence. We have some simple configuration steps for Palo Alto, Cisco Firepower, and Fortinet. The benefit here is it's very simple to set up and forget. We've seen from various institutions a large reduction in malicious traffic after setting up the threat feeds into their firewalls. So again, cost-benefit analysis there is very little time to get this set up and rolling, and a large reduction in malicious traffic. And on top of that, there's also a benefit in terms of just resources utilization on your perimeter or where you're using this, right? If you're seeing a reduction in 30% traffic, that's fairly significant, frees up and your firewalls to better be used for other uses. Not sure if there's anything else for this slide. Next one. So support.
Thanks. I'm going to do the last couple of slides.
Sounds good.
Diving in, great job. And my fan is still listening, so when we get to questions, if we have any that we need him for, he'll be there. So I'll just finish up with a couple more pieces before we pass it back to Kevin to wrap us up. In terms of support, the main mechanism for which we decided to move forward with for support is Slack. And the advantage on Slack is it really allows for, there's many advantages, some disadvantages, but the biggest advantage that we saw is it allows for this opportunity to collaboratively work on support and collaboration inside the institutions and with NREN partners. So depending upon where you are and what the NREN partner in your given province or territory is looking to do, you'll either have access to both CanSSOC and your NREN partner analysts on your Slack channels, and or just CanSSOC, depending upon what that looks like. But our hope is to get the entire community in that space. We're also looking as we move forward to provide an opportunity for institutions to collaborate and share stories with each other inside this environment. There are 4 feeds that we'll talk about that we have inside Slack. So the first is institution-CanSSOC, and this is institution will be replaced with your institution name. And this is your Slack channel that includes the entire support team. Again, that includes CanSSOC, our analysts, Macan and Axel and others, as well as if potentially NREN partner analysts inside, depending upon where you are. And here's an opportunity where you can ask questions, report any issues, or identify anything related to your institution. You can also disclose confidential information on there if you so choose to, that you want us to put into the threat feed into MISP on your behalf without any attribution. You'll also get access to Threat Feed, and Threat Feed is the channel that we post to allow you to provide any updates on the service. So if we're doing an upgrade or if there's any issues or anything along those lines, they'll get posted to that channel. Threat intel, this is primarily directed for InfoSec personnel, and this is where we will share information, potentially sensitive information or additional information about alerts or advisories coming out. We're in the process of looking at what the best way to support the community with Slack is. So right now, this is an open channel where anyone can post to. We're looking at potentially creating one that CanSSOC maintains with things that we're seeing, as well as more of a community-driven one where we can all share and collaborate information on that. So if you have any feedback or thoughts on that, if you'd like more or your suggestions, we're really open to that as well. And I will talk about the TLP or traffic light protocol in a minute, but first I'll also note there is a channel that's threat feed documentation. And here's where we post any and all documentation related to threat feed. So the documentation that Axel referenced around how to integrate into the existing firewalls that are in there are posted there. As additional institutions integrate with other firewalls, we have NREN partners have indicated there's some other technologies out there that institutions are using. We'll work to support institutions and NREN partners in creating that documentation and then post it there. And so if at your institution you have a different technology or a different IDS or IPS that you're integrating with, we would encourage you to create some documentation associated with that, even in draft form. And then we can use that to crowdsource and support the community in the broader picture with it. I do want to go back to the threat intel and traffic light protocol. So when you sign up to Threat Feed, and Kevin and I will both talk about this in a minute, your institution must sign a confidentiality agreement. And as part of that confidentiality agreement, there is a traffic light protocol, which basically says you can designate information as TLP red, which means it can't be shared outside of you as an individual. TLP amber can be shared amongst your organization, or TLP green, which can be more freely shared. When individuals sign up to the Slack channel, we'll send a little survey that we've vetted into Slack, which asks each individual to understand that to confirm that they understand what the traffic light protocol is and will follow it, and also specify which of these channels they need access to. And the reason there, as we all know, is that while the confidentiality agreement is an organizational agreement that someone in your organization signs, the actual implementation and understanding of TLP red, amber, and green and otherwise is something that each of the individuals must confirm. And so this is our step to sort of make sure that that is as widely disseminated as possible. Next slide. So I'm going to go really quickly through this. Kevin also has a slide, and so I debated removing this, but I wanted to just highlight a couple of things. You can see in terms of the onboarding, there's some components that Canary is helping out with, which is fantastic and we're really excited about. There's components that CanSSOC is helping with. And then potentially once the sort of administrative details and accounts are done, in terms of who has that one-on-one meeting with you to walk through some additional technical details, that'll either be CanSSOC or your NREN partner, depending upon where you're located and who's most comfortable. A lot of NREN partners have indicated that they would like to do that. So we've trained them so that they can train out the institutions. And it's a really great opportunity for us to all work collaboratively around supporting institutions. As noted, you have to sign a confidentiality agreement. That agreement is a three-way agreement between the University of Toronto, McGill, and your institution. The reason being is that we have sources inside our threat feed for which we have signed agreements on and need you to validate that you're not going to take that information and reshare it. One of those is the Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity, and our agreement is actually based upon their agreement. So if you signed an NDA with the CSE for the Cyber Centre, you'll notice that it looks very similar. And that is why we also have a commercial partner that Axel and Macan mentioned, and we need you to validate that you won't reshare that information as well as recognizing the TLP. And then we have to create the accounts on MISMEMIML just in terms of the way that component is done. And then at that point, depending upon where it's at, you'll either work directly with your NREN partner who will bring us in if needed, or we'll support you as you move forward. Next slide. So the final thing I'll note is just about sort of actionable intelligence. And so This is something that's becoming more and more critical and important as we move forward. CanSSOC is here to provide you, obviously, with Threat Feed, but we're also a place where you can disclose indicators or information if you have a breach or you have something that's going on inside your institution. What we do with that information is whatever you tell us. So ideally, the biggest reason why institutions will send us a note and disclose is that they would like to share indicators and information about something that has happened inside their institution or on their network, but they don't want anyone to know that it's them for legal or insurance or reputation purposes. They want to remain anonymous. And so this is a way in which we will protect your anonymity. If you give us indicators, you can then indicate what you want done with those. So we want you to update in the threat feed. We will ask, do you mind if we write an advisory, which is a piece of, we'll write up an email and send it out in Slack and via email to partners who have signed the confidentiality agreement, so that in addition to being protected against those indicators in their via threat feed, they also have the ability to look inside their networks to see if maybe they were already compromised by something that was similar or have a bad actor on their network that they don't know about. We strongly encourage you to do this. Again, you can update NIST yourself, which you'll learn about in the onboarding session. But if you're not comfortable doing that, you want to remain completely anonymous, feel free to send this to us. And it really can help out the entire community in finding information and preventing attacks and compromise. Threat Feed is the foundation for this. So in all cases, as soon as we get that information, we go to Threat Feed and see, is this in our MISP instance already? And if it is, who reported it? What additional information and context can we get about those indicators? And then we'll send that back to you and potentially even look online to see if we can find more information to support. We also have some logs that will do some searching to see if other institutions might be impacted by that. And so it provides a simple sector source mechanism for sharing information out there. We also have another thing that we might email you as you onboard is if something has been disclosed to us and we have access to another piece of information and we see that there might be something malicious on your network, we will send you a targeted alert to your institutions with as much information as we had to really help in institutions in protecting against cybersecurity threats. So with that, Kevin, I will pass it back to you. Finish this off.
Thank you so much, Jill and Axel and Martin. There's teamwork. That was great. So how to sign up? Really quickly. If your organization is already enrolled in the CIP, which means that you've already signed your base agreement here with Canary. We have probably about 80% of them that have been signed, so that's great. If you haven't signed, we highly encourage you to get that signed because it is the base agreement that you need for everything we do. So any program or any initiative that we launch, we'll need you to sign that agreement. So we would always say, so why wait? So your provincial or territorial partner in the NREN will send you a link to the threat feed form. After that form is in and submitted, we will send you the CanSSOC confidentiality agreement. You need to sign that agreement. It's e-signed, really simple. And then your RAN partner will contact you to coordinate the onboarding. If you have not signed up, the very first thing you should do is you should contact your NREN partner to confirm that you qualify and that you're part of our 210. If you are, the NREN partner will send you a link to the CIP participation form. During this form, you can actually choose that you want the threat feed as well. After you submit the form, we will send you the agreement to enroll in the CIP, which is called the OCCA and the CanSSOC confidentiality. You need to sign the OCCA, and then you need to execute the CanSSOC confidentiality agreement. And at that point, your NREN partner will be back in touch with you to set up your onboarding. So I know that's a lot of detail and information, so we're going to open the floor up to any questions.
Okay, so I'm going to jump in here. There have been a couple of questions. Jessica asked one in chat, and I actually had some others asked, and it relates to sort of Compute Canada and the Compute Canada Federation. So from a CanSSOC standpoint, Laura, from a CanSSOC standpoint, we onboard the legal entity. And so that confidentiality agreement that Kevin and I talked about is really the sort of kickoff for us being able to share that information with you. So all of the information security analysts and others that support Compute Canada and the regions that are employed by institutions, we would onboard you through your institution. So I will pick on SciNet because it's easy in this case. So SciNet is legally part of the University of Toronto, and those employees are University of Toronto employees. So if SciNet wanted access, they would need to work with their institution to get the institution to sign the confidentiality agreement. And at that point, we could then give access to those analysts, to the information to those analysts via that institution, as long as each of those individuals agreed to the TLP through Slack. So hopefully that answers that question. I know Jessica had it. I think you're at Memorial University. I looked you up, and others. And so I think that would answer that question. The next question came through on the Q&A related to, so the question was, it was a professor in Quebec wondering if the threat feed information could be made available for research. This is a great question, and one that I am going to defer and answer after. Foundationally, CanSSOC always intended that data and information could be made available to support research. So foundationally, we're absolutely supportive of this as a use case and enabling research and development inside Canada for this. I just need to take offline and sort of make sure and just understand if there are any restrictions on some of those data sources that we have, just so we don't break any of the existing agreements that we have, and figure out how to make that happen. So I will defer that, and I'll work on getting your contact information from Canary to support that later, or follow up with you on the specific answer to that question. Then the next question, and Martin, I think maybe we will get you to handle this one, or Axel, because you have more intel on the feed. So the question is, how do CanSSOC feeds compare to proprietary feeds from next-gen firewall vendors? Example, Cisco Talos Firepower feeds. And could the CanSSOC feeds replace vendor feeds? Nothing?
I mean, they're different. It's not the same. Let's use my phone on the other device. Okay. So what happens is that we don't have like the same base of threat intelligence. In fact, so if you have access to the Cisco Talos feed, they're complementary and you could use both. So at McGill, we get the Cisco Talos for free as part of our agreement with Cisco. So we are leveraging that feed. It's enabled within our Cisco Firepower. And in addition to that, we feed into our Cisco Firepower the feeds from CanSSOC. So they both are complementary, and likely that if you would compare the indicators that are present in both feeds, you would find an overlap. But obviously not all the indicators that we have in CanSSOC would be found in Cisco, and vice versa. So could the CanSSOC feed replace the vendor feed? I mean, potentially, but if you already have access to the Talos feed as part of an agreement, so I would keep it and I would add the CanSSOC one. So hope that answers your question.
Yeah, and so it really comes down to that cost benefit perspective. We have a commercial feed in our vendor. We're really excited for this partnership that we've created, or are in the process of creating with this vendor. And so beyond that, you know, if you look and you spend a lot of time in this, it's multiple feeds are better. We can't afford to have more than one commercial feed at this point in time. And so if other institutions choose to do that, that might make sense. it's really your question, but it might provide some opportunity to offset some costs if you see that what CanSSOC has is sufficient. Mapen, there's a question on the, or Axel, there's a question on the Q&A. I think I understand it, but you're probably better suited to answer. Yeah,
I could do it. So unfortunately, at this time, no, we don't have an easy integration with Office 365. Office 365, you could potentially do an integration with like the Graph API and that, or leveraging like latest version of the taxi protocol, but unfortunately, it's not something that we are supporting right now. But potentially in maybe like 6 months or more, it's something that we'll be adding as a functionality. But at this time, unfortunately, no.
So we'll give it we do have 8 more minutes. We'll give it another second and see if there are any other questions.
Okay, I don't see any more questions coming in. So I want to thank everybody for their time. If you do have any questions or any comments, the email here at the bottom, cip@canary.ca, will get you the answers that you need. You can also feel free to reach out to Jill if you have any questions directly. But yeah, thank you, Jill and Axel and Martin for a great presentation. And we hope to see you all signing up for the CanSSOC Threat Feed ASAP. Have a wonderful day, everybody.